Looks like something's happening.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Poetry Reading Series at the New City Center, curated by Aria in the back. Thank you so much for having us. Lester and I had classes here over the past month, 2 months, and now we're having a reading together. And this is my comrade Sunmi. So we're all just sharing space on stage. I'm gonna read some poems. We're gonna come up with a question to ask. The three of us, each of us will ask each other a question, and then that's after the reading, and then you kind of kick it over to y'all, and then we'll wrap it up. So while we're reading, if you come with any questions you want to ask us in the Q&A, we very much welcome it. How y'all feeling? Good. How y'all feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, cool. So before we get started, I'm gonna read this in order to do right by the grant. This activity is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council and the Minnesota State Arts Board, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. We want to thank the Grapevine Collective, which lovingly administers New City Center for Healing Justice. It's a grassroots, volunteer-run nonprofit, and there's a big sign with the QR code hanging in the lobby if you want more information or would like to support their work. Also, thanks to Sisters Caroline for providing snacks, which is in the back. It's a nice snack table. Also, thanks to Sisters Caroline for providing snacks. People are welcome to stay and mingle after the meeting. Okay, I've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. So first we're gonna have Lester, and then I'll read confluence, and then Sunmi will read, and then we'll do Q&A.
Okay, I'm going to go and introduce Lester. Lester is a savage writer in living color who writes for political, social, economic change, and Black futures. Born in Chicago, Illinois, he holds an MFA from the University of Southern Maine Stone Coast writing program and an MS Ed, a Master of Science in Education, from the University of Pennsylvania. Influenced by Gwendolyn Brooks, Carl Sandburg, and Toni Morrison, Lester strives to weave traditional forms and techniques with the vibrancy of African American experiences and speech. Rich details are enhanced by the musical tone from Lester's childhood on the south side of Chicago to his present on the north side of Minneapolis. Lester's work has appeared in print in the Stonehouse Anthology, the Southern Brioche Journal, Tulane Review, A Garden of Black Joy, and digitally in the Brushfire Literary. In the UK.
Thank you so much, Sunmi. Appreciate that introduction. It's fire. So I'll read a few poems. The first one that I'm going to get us started with is entitled Black Antiques. This poem has an epigraph, and it reads, "The deaths caused by COVID-19 have reduced overall life expectancy by 1.13 years, according to analysis by researchers at the University of Southern California and Princeton. The reduction in life expectancy is estimated to be even greater among racial and ethnic minorities. Life expectancy is estimated to fall by 2.10 years among Blacks and 3.05 years among Latinos. The decline would be 0.68 years among whites," end quote. Rob Stein, NPR News. Why can't we all grow old? Advance in age, just as sun rays slug through the day? Why not all white hair instead of salt and pepper tops uplifting our crowns? Why can't we rule land in our castles until we pass and pass it down? Why can't we leave a leg up, you see? Not inscribed by them, but us, you see? Why can't my homies not trap out the bando and everywhere we stain? Why can't I make it with my day ones, my friends who grew with me now take aim? Why will others see life in their 80s, 90s? I'm stuck at 65. Why can't I imagine times with my great-grandkids, not plots, tombstones, or graves? Why can't this country turn down the melting pot from boiling over with rage? Why can't I simply live? How can I survive to become a black antique? This next piece is in bring, bring. Operator, what is your emergency? Hi, sir. I'm sitting in the study home of my house at 742 Evergreen Terrace, and there is a little boy selling lemonade on the corner. Yep. No, he doesn't have a weapon that I can see, but, you know, he looks suspicious. Yep. He doesn't have a permit for that. And he is interrupting my view of my tulips with his dreadlocks and that goddamn drip, drap, drop that seems to be emanating from his radio flyer. Well, I think he's been here all day. Even if he just got here, I need him gone. Can you please escort him off the corner so that I can feel safe? Watch my programs in peace, please and thank you. I pay my taxes, buddy. Take him back to the good, where little brown boys come from. What's the real emergency? Insane. This next piece is entitled A Flower's Life Cycle. Black flowers, brown flowers, red flowers, sunflowers are the plants Tupac grew from the concrete. Pink flowers, hell flowers, orange flowers, hooded treasures live life, remain discreet. Light flowers, head flowers, still flowers, fast flowers, bodies in America face deceit. Unlike flow, white flowers, black flowers yet cared for very inconsistently. Wildflowers, house flowers, old flow, young followers, and depleted spirituality. Bruised flowers, fear flowers, sad flowers, told flowers, and Makasika, nor fair democracy. Low flowers, confused low, diffused flow, tears flowers. That's how America grows for some folks. This next poem is entitled, Oh, What Violence. WCCO reporting breaking news. Cadillac converter crime increases and Aldi on Lowry and Penn Avenue North is closing for good. Catalytic converters are taking it twice the rate in the Twin Cities, especially near Walmart in Brooklyn Park, which is closing due to underperformance. Northsiders left asking, where am I supposed to shop for my family? Walgreens is pulling out of West Broadway saying, all pharmacy accounts need to be transferred by the 15th. Where am I supposed to get my prescription filled now? Transfer to Cub Northside, they said. Who doesn't want to be here nowhere? Where am I supposed to get organic food? Ain't there a Walmart north of here? North Minneapolis is a food desert. Ain't there no more. They closed too. Aldi said they couldn't renew the lease. Space ain't there. We can't accommodate bigger freezers. They never said they were planning to shut down though. Management just started posting signs saying, open to the 15th. They never said they were planning to close though. Just started liquidation sales online last week. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have a car. They just started having only self-checkout lines open. Ain't no other groceries on the bus line, and you can't Uber with a basket full of food. Ain't no other grocery stores in the neighborhood. You can't walk from Falwell Park to Broadway and Aldrich. There are plenty of senior citizens in these neighborhoods. You can't walk from Falwell Park to West Broadway Strip Mall. There are plenty of children living over on the north side. They never talk about the stores leaving the neighborhood. There are plenty of happy families living over north. Yet they never talk about the good things. Only deadly police raid bust drug den on Lindale Avenue North, Broadway. African-American teenage male suspect still at large. Armed carjacking in McKinley on 33rd Avenue. Teen suspect captured after chase. WCCO presents breaking news. Aldi closed. Walgreens closed. Walmart closed. Capitalism continues killing. For my last piece I'll read is entitled Black Antiques Part 2. This poem has an epigraph. It reads, kids on the block stay getting killed. When will it stop? When will it end? I mean for real, real, real. Really for real, real, real. Earth Gang, American Horror Story. I was in Cub Northside the other day, buying salted butter, Pepto-Bismol, and some birthday candles to brandish atop a brown buttercream crown growing out of yellow cake. Now today is my 31st birthday, and instead of buying 31 mix-match candles, like my angel used to do, I decided to be juvenile and go with the 2.5-inch white wax red outlined 3 and 1. As the items jerked then stilled on the ashy conveyor belt, as hands pushing toward and pulling tickets, automated handrails in the Red Line terminal on 95th Street. The cashew-colored queen ringing, dinging, and rang, scanning items asked when I arrived at the register. You have a 13-year-old at home? You get them something nice for their birthday or what? To her surprise, I replied, not at all, miss. I just turned 31 today, and I'm buying myself candles since my mom can't send them no more after going on to glory. 31? Man, that's old. You about the same age as my stepdaddy. He only 33. She said with a beaming smile on her mahogany face as she poked fun at me. I replied, 33? Sheesh, that ain't long at all to be on this earth. You know Jesus Christ was crucified when he was 33. That's crazy that you consider 31 old. Wonder why? Jesus who? Nah, I'm playing. But it's crazy how y'all think you young. I'm only 17. She smirked as she said, like kids do when they know they are provoking. I'm the real young one. I got the rest of my life to look forward to. You know, we peak when we get to be 18 or 19. Ain't got nothing to look forward except wrinkles and arthritis after that. You know you old, my stepdaddy old, my grandma old too. She just turned 52. My mama 36, so you know she a fossil cause her hair is all the way gray. Yeah, 30 is not the new 20. In that moment, in checkout line number 16, crowded with people buying steaks for intimate dinners, avocados for toast, whole milk, diapers, flowers, and other perishable items, that my life, this black life, and this sweet bronze-faced girl with Bantu knots and beads, that our lives are perceived not to grow old like the trees towering in the lost 40 of Minnesota. Why is this scholar so nearsighted about her future? Our future. A future that so many of us can't see past our 20s, to where our grandkids will double dutch, or where our great-grandchildren will step to cut a rug. Rich as ancestors that started 24th dynasty of Egyptian pharaohs. And the irony is that we do it to ourselves. We kill ourselves just to kill the op. We go live on these socials just to show we pop. We don't go to school when we don't need to stop. And this is all for what? Guap? Blue backs with white man faces you spend just to imitate other people's places? I mean, for real. Really, for real. If we could do it to ourselves, could we undo it to ourselves? Get old, like the Grecian urn during the unequal time, when that blind bard called bodies Ethiopians. I always wondered, what did we used to call ourselves before we encountered nigger? Appreciate that. Next up, Confluence is a poet, conflict mediator, and community educator. They go by the pronouns they, them. In 2023, due to institutional structures that rely on hoarding, domination, dispossession, and elitism, Confluence swore from relying on or participating in large institutions and committed instead to a political art and teaching practice that is grounded in teaching, collaborating, and organizing with those who are marginalized by the interlocked, inhumane structures that make up U.S. and Western societies. Now, whenever they have stable housing, they teach liberatory art making and workshops in community orgs and in their living room. Let's give it up for Confluence.
I'll start with this and then we'll feel it out from there. I don't read poems like that no more. Not my own. I got an MFA. I don't recommend it. Do not get an MFA if you don't need it. MFA is good for community, and maybe they pay you some money to come there and study. But otherwise, it's kind of rough. It's kind of shitty. And I unlearned, or I learned a way of speaking that, or a way of writing that, isn't about reaching my own people. So while I love these poems, they aren't using a dialect, they aren't using an embodied language that my own people, I've done the preview, they aren't using a language that I feel like my people can sit with, or like it requires them to come to me, and I'd rather go to them. So that's what I feel about these poems. I love these poems, but you know, there's some tension I'm feeling. So this first one is written in a moment of really intense lostness in a park in New York. I used to live in New York, and I fled New York in 2024. And this was a poem kind of written in some of that like despondency I went through. Even if you asked, I couldn't draw a map to myself. How did I get here? All I have as refuge is the engine of habit and hope that adorn me in the facade of, this is a life, I guess. This is a life, I say, pulling the lotion up my arms and onto my shoulders. I'm safe here, I say, as I open the blinds in the apartment across the street from the park I love, in the same neighborhood from which, some years ago, I fled. Rooted in dream, I thought the park, so big that in the center, the city disappears and the planet seems to return. I thought the park was free from significant intervention between what was once called Lenape and what is now called by all manners of incorrect names. New York City, Brooklyn, Prospect. I nurse the lake's edge and cry grief. I watch the robins dig for worms, and I think of cycles, uninterrupted, perhaps for centuries. But the designers, Olmsted and Vogue, they branded it as organic. They branded it as continuous. They trucked in the sycamore and the ash. They trafficked the birds in the hulls of freighters. And the lake is in part maintained by a human flipped switch that drains or fills it with city water. It's an enactment of oasis in the city that is carried by human labor and human timing. But sometimes the facade breaks down. I lose myself. Where am I exactly, I say, laying in the grass, drought brown again this summer, trying to calm the jittering static, the broken nerves, trying to restart the performance. In that same park, I think that same year, so I identify as trans, I identify as non-binary. Maybe the more precise language is gender-free. And I was in the park, and I just was wearing some like pink pants, y'all. Pink pants, a soft top that's clearly a blouse, but who cares? And I had this experience where a dude did a thing. And this poem was about that and how I moved through that. What do you need to know about this poem? This poem uses the term, okay, first of all, it's triggering. So it's, you know, helmet or trigger warning for violence against trans people and queer people. And then it uses a term called Batty Boy. Batty Boy is, I think it originates in Jamaica, but it's kind of used across the Caribbean. It's the equivalent for, I guess, sissy, or the F word they use it to derogatorily refer to like gay people, or gay men specifically. kind of being taken back now. But this person did not mean it in an empowering way. So this is about being in that same part I read about earlier. This is after June Jordan. It's called Poem About Policing. Gunshots for all the batty boys, sings the man with dreads, who was smiling just a second ago. A wide, unlonely smile as he approached me. He was giddy, I'd call it, from my distance, because my dreads are lush and on point today, and they're threaded with jewels that make me think of my mother, and two pendants that come from two separate women I once called lovers. And I'm wearing pants as pink and soft as the final flourish of a sunset. And so I reason the man must have been giddy, because he felt whatever warmth supposedly pulls up from the lower parts of the body and blots out some of the loneliness in a man's brain whenever he sees an attractive woman who looks from afar like a moon in the daytime after a too long and moonless night. But then he got close enough to see the beard, close enough to see my weary eyes, the clumsiness, the sharp corners of my body that our minds have come to understand as mannish. And he must have thought this was a bait and switch, a trick I played on him. Or else, to pull myself into a world where I am not in danger, I told myself maybe he could see closer up that my face looks like the face of an old lover, an old abusive lover, a person he wishes he could still share a meal with, but because of the world, he can never again. Or maybe my face looks too much like his own, and he's not yet reconciled with his own sadness, with what people who were supposed to love him have allowed him to become, and so now he's in a kind of grief. I tell myself this is why he frowned. I tell myself this version to eclipse the other version so that the poison pouring through my capillaries, the clouds pouring into my synapses, the panic, the reaper of my imagination would be soothed, would be disarmed. But the man is unconfused now and has begun singing about his new need for revenge. Gunshots for all the batty boys, and he's circling me now, a bleached white hawk, wings wide open, watching me and waiting, I think, for an opening. And so the poison seeps deeper and takes hold across time. I feel it later on a crowded B48, when the man in the sleeveless shirt has no option but to sit next to its energy. I feel the poison pulse and burst while a cousin and I have an impossible debate about the rights of queer people. And before I can tell him that the wind between my legs in a dress reminds me of when we chased one another through our backyards, he blurts in rage that men in dresses should be shot in the head. The man is still circling and singing a song that he knows is a pill of cyanide. And I listen, without making it seem like I'm listening. I watch him circle without looking at him for my safety, yes, and also because there is a robin circling me too, bouncing, twisting its head and listening with its feet, looking for a worm, a meal in the fine details of the soil beneath the grass, which I haven't been able to mention it till now, is green. Green is all fuck. The green, the field so thick and wide and green that looking at the robin trotting through it, the man and the gun and the poison disappear. And I begin to imagine, what if what we call the sea was not water, but thick, many feet tall grass with breezes threaded through it? I imagined, what if the robins were to flutter through the green, green sea? What would that do to our forms? What would that do to our metaphors? I have two more pieces to go. This one's also heavy. Haha. This is about, I guess, the climate crisis. That's all you need to know. This is me trying to write a prophecy or something. I don't know. This was not a writing exercise. Attempted prophecy. Did you come here looking for an answer to your longing Answer to what we have come to call grief's pine on the muscles of your sleep. And what did you find? Of course you wanted the sky wide open and free from weather, clear as the day after the storm that flattened what you know, rolled out and onto whatever landscape is next. I spit and make a river. There, in the water, I come to the conclusion finally. I cannot speak of myself without speaking of the aftermath of catastrophe. For that is where I am from, no? I am mostly water, but I am also mostly what is reflected atop that water. A soaring lightning bolt, rain rippling my image prismatic. Think of the body as something more porous, without edges. I know you are familiar with borders, having been subjected to them, but for now, if only a moment, push past them with me. By the time you read this, I will have already found a way back to you, prompting you with what is next. It's more difficult than you think to hover at the cliff's edge like this, peering into the rocks, transmitting what I see, and whose body. What is it called when the story breaks past the storyteller's teeth, comes crawling out the storyteller's mouth with its own history, its own body, its own heartbeat? By the time you read this, I will have made it past this agony. By the time you read this, the planet will have spun on its axis, and the countries that were once here will be no longer. By the time you read this, one tipping point will have had a whole palm pushed against it, and another tipping point will have been lined up. By the time you read this, the present will have worse weather, and the future shrouded with what we do not wish to become memories. By the time you read this, doom will have arrived, and we will have twisted it open, reached inside and confirmed what we already knew lived in doom's heart. A shoreline monetized, an olive grove being closed in by the law, by the heat and mouth and open belly of empire. Oh God, by the time you read this, it may not matter what we finally rally to do, to dismantle, to disintegrate, and rebuild with sweeter and softer desires. By the time you read this, the water will have risen, and there will be the bodies of other animals in it. By the time you read this, it will have been too late. And aren't you reading this now? See, that's heavy. Last poem. This was, again, in New York. If I ever publish a book, it'll be like a whole half of it will just be sad poems in New York about how hard it is to live in New York and my body. This is a poem I wrote as I contemplated leaving New York to move to Canada. So it's like a second migration. And I was just working through that. This is called the Departure Song. There's a room inside my throat that I haunt like a ghoul, abandoned by myself. The room lodged there whenever I have to face the impossible choices. Like, how do I better love who I love? Or why am I being forced after all this time to migrate once more? Have I not paid well my human dues? Done well to lose count of the rooms erected like fortresses upon this land in which I've suffered, in which I've made love with someone American, or been brought to such glee that out loud I've finally said it, yes, I could live here. There are words to describe it. Human systems that have been studied and codified that come to bear down on me now. Capitalism, hierarchy, empire. Words that can slide atop one another and through which, like a prism, one can see me, or one of my juked better selves, horror-like, their forms contorted, and their timelines abused. But none of these words are revolution, though. None of these words are doors. That's all I got for y'all. I'm about to introduce Sunmi. Give it up for Sunmi, y'all. We do not read like poems. Ha 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 ha. Where's the email with your bio? in a hurry. Okay. Okay. This is Sunmi's bio. Sunmi is a Nigerian American writer and poet and all-around fantastic person. And does a bunch of things and is working on the. You know what? You didn't put that there. Okay. Sunmi is a Nigerian writer and poet whose work spans lyrical prose, personal essays, and experimental poetry, and gardening. Their writing traverses themes of identity, displacement, ancestral memory, intimacy, spiritual tension, grief, rage, and the quiet complexity of being. Whether excavating personal histories or confronting the violent architectures of power, Sunmi's work blends emotional precision with sonic texture, lyricism, and sensory richness. Goddamn. Across genre and form, they write to name what often goes unspoken. They are committed to storytelling as both personal reckoning and communal witness, drawing from the cultural specificity of Yoruba lineage and the expansive inheritance of the Black literary tradition. God damn. What the fuck out of that? Give it up for Sunmi, y'all.
Well, I hope I live up to that introduction.
You do everything.
Thank you. This first poem is entitled Body Remembers It Is Not Whole, Knows It Will One Day Forget Itself, a collection of parts gummed together with muscles and veins, no different from wallpaper, hanging by the stick and stretch of hubba bubba, asks itself when it stops and starts to become a body, why its illusion of wholeness distracts from the dangle of its bones, as though bubblegum cannot be unstuck from paper, peeled from the underside of classroom desks and church pews. Waste. Is body greedy to mourn its missing? Is it unfair to be discriminate in its grief? To only mourn that which it cannot forget and has learned to rely? Is it utility or identity it misses? The pretense that beneath skin are not separate machines moving in unison, destined to grow apart with time. Body does not know itself, so it names the most beautiful of its parts, adorns every fragile piece in something soft and youthful, no different truly from a bride, groomed and primped for the appetite of peering eyes and permanent performance. This next poem is called Respectable Prey. My mother fears they might come for me, prepares me with instructions to be delectable, appear meek and non-threatening, obedient and pliable, gorge on filial piety, prove my humanity when asked, jump if demanded, approach their guillotine graciously, head bowed, orderly sheep marching to slaughter. If I am soft and gentle, saccharine in presentation, perhaps they will eat me slowly, sharpen their teeth so their bites are quick, not dull and painful. Fear and adrenaline makes soft meat dark, too much gristle, too much chew, and I won't be delectable, won't be fit for feasting. What a shame it would be to be something that could not be consumed, too unpleasant to destroy. A captured creature, squabbling between the teeth of its captor, flesh caught and snagged in the crevices of each tooth. Inconvenient.
shame, truly, to be prey that is uninviting, unfit for digestion. This next poem is called God as Witness, and I don't like New York. I have not liked New York for a long time. I recently went to New York for the first time, but when I thought about New York, I thought about like magnifying the feelings that I had in Minneapolis downtown with the big structures and the big buildings, and how insignificant they made me feel. And when I thought about New York, I thought about that on like a bigger scale and like what that might look like. So that's always been kind of the fear that haunts me. So last week, I guess, yeah, a couple weeks ago, my siblings and I went to New York for the first time, and I have complicated feelings, but my initial inclination about the being swallowed by unions and like feeling like an ant, it lived up to the poem. So this poem is called God as Witness. It is true. The skyscrapers will grow legs and eat me. I fear the four corners of New York, reigned by the heights of World Trade's twin ghosts, Central Park's towers and Empire State buildings. Even Lady Liberty licks her lips and opens her mouth when she sees me. I am haunted by the sway of buildings that do not bow down to gods, skyscrapers whose knees do not bend to pray. And I imagine this was God's fear when he scrambled the tongues of towers and their babble. Buildings so tall, they hover over his feet. He lifts his dress to tiptoe around them. What use is that God, afraid of buildings that swallow and spit out bones? Me and my God fear the apathy of structures, gods in their own right and brutalists in their construction, who do not answer prayers, yet worshipped and deified, their presence an altar to a being who builds bodies out of glass and bones from steel. Me and my God fear a being who cannot hear us, in whose sight I am tiny and insignificant. I am a speck of dust to be wiped away, an ant carelessly stepped on by hurried feet, sidewalk gum to be scraped and scrubbed. I want to dance in the sun, but the skyscrapers will not move from my sight. I fear their menacing height. They open their mouths to eat sunlight and spit out shadows in which I hide, convinced. If this God does not see me, perhaps it will not eat me. And this last poem is pretty long, so I hope you stick with me, but it's called The Shape of Not Belonging. Foreign has a look. It has a smell. It opens its mouth and you hear, I do not belong here. It tells you its name and you eagerly mispronounce and break its lineage between your teeth. Foreign contorts its body into a shape that fits your expectations and still disappoints. It tastes bitter on your tongue even after diluting itself for your consumption. And it learns that even when greeted with a warm smile and gentle hands, it will be inevitably probed, dissected and stripped for parts, its body becoming unconsenting borders marred by invasive hands. Foreign compels you to ask what kind of foreign it is, not out of care, serious curiosity, and certainly not because it matters, There is nothing tangible one can do with that information. It only forces foreign into a spotlight it often attempts to avoid. Yet you ask anyway, entitled to foreign self-revelation for your satisfaction and amusement. You want to know if this is the foreign you can categorize and stereotype, or the type you can find comfort and familiarity in. Is this the terrorist foreign, or the one you refer to as a continent? Maybe it's the illegal kind, or the type of foreign you can mistake for another foreign, because sometimes all foreigns look alike. Is this your preferred foreign? The palatable foreign you fawn over, the kind you admire for how it pronounces croissant or for calling a restroom the loo. And if it is exotic, and if it is the exotic kind, it is ripe for your sexualization and dehumanization. I am foreign too. I am the kind of foreign that is a foreigner everywhere. I've lost track of how many times someone has reminded me I do not belong here or anywhere. They are rarely outwardly cruel, but their words are arranged in such a way that they might as well say, go back to where you are from, but my foreign has nowhere to return to. Foreign has a smell. In 5th grade, the smell of my foreign was the obeata my mother cooked on winter mornings before school. The blend of curry, bell peppers, Scotch bonnet, aromatics, and bouillon clinging to our winter jackets, following us into school. In the heated hallways as we waited for the doors to open, the other kids stood opposite us because we smelled weird and gross. My mother's foreign smelled like a racist patient telling her racist coworker who told her racist supervisor she smelled bad, all of whom ironically were heavy smokers whose clothing stank of stale cigarettes. My mother, who bathed twice a day, ironed her clothing and wore an expensive scentless deodorant infused with alpha hydroxy acids. Foreign has a sound. My mother's foreign often sounds like a dropped phone call because usually when she is attempting to make an appointment, because those women on the other side swear they could not hear or understand her. Sometimes her foreign sounds like me, acting as her personal translator. Sometimes foreign is an action. My mother's foreign was her boss who underpaid her, asking her to bring her passport into work because she thought she was illegal, so she could pay her even less. Mine was my supervisor who, bless her heart, was more ignorant than cruel, asked me about my immigration status. My mother's foreign was the repeated assertion and discouragement from educators not to pursue nursing because people like her do not succeed there. It is studying alone in a classroom full of peers who collaborate among themselves but exclude her. Sometimes, foreign is sitting beside the only empty seat on an otherwise overcrowded bus. Foreign looks like you, just you, always you, in a classroom where you are the only one, drowning in a suffocating sea of faces that do not look like yours. They ask if you rode an elephant to school in Nigeria. It is still you, alone, in school musicals, after-school activities, summer camps, lunch tables, on the playground, birthday parties, church, university classrooms, your job, everywhere. There was a time my foreign grew hips and was asked to dance. The first time I went back home to Nigeria, my grandmother spoke to me in Yoruba. Show me how your people dance, she asked. Am I not her people? My foreign oscillates between pedestalization and demanded accountability and explanation. My foreign is never neutral. It always comes with assumptions, projections, and stories about that one time you visited another part of Africa, one that has nothing to do with Nigeria. Foreign is often treated as a threat, an invasive species mapped for eradication. Yet even the most invasive species are unconsenting, forced to survive in environments they never chose because home is no longer a place they can return to. Nothing foreign chooses displacement over home if given the choice. And your audacity to believe you belong here, to believe you are not foreign too, to believe any part of you is native to anywhere, as though to be born onto land, to inhabit space is to inherit its acceptance, as though every breath inhaled is not an intrusion, a defiance of a space that does not claim you, as though your foreignness and mine are unrelated, trespassers on soil where we cannot grow, soil that does not want us here. Your foreign may not come with an accent. It may not demand you reveal yourself. It may speak the right English, smell unassuming and look like it belongs here and everywhere. But you are foreign too, to this temporary body, in this temporary world where you and I temporarily live. You belong to nowhere too. The shape of your foreign may be seamless, invisible, unspoken, or even unclaimed, but it will find you everywhere.
Woo! Give it up for Sunmi.
Yeah, you're up again. God damn.
Yeah, give a round of applause. Thank you for sharing. It was really nice to hear some poems and to hear your experience. That was phenomenal. I guess I can start us off with my first question. I think that there was an awesome level of diversity within the stuff that we read as well as the ways in which we presented it. And so for me, as a poet talking to other poets, I'm always interested. What is your favorite literary device or piece of figurative language to use or play with within a poem?
I think it's very obvious I like extended metaphors.
Why? What is it about an extended metaphor that gets you going and you use them so well?
It's also because it builds a body. And the other thing too is like, when you're able to like follow the sequence of the logic of like how something functions, how it works, you can map it onto other things, and you start seeing like the architecture of other parts of the world in different things like objects, and like even people and the way people have conversations. So I feel like it's, for me, it's a very accessible way of like mapping complex ideas or ideas that I may struggle with, like talking about in simpler ways into everyday items or everyday interactions that people can understand and relate to.
The content may change, but the context doesn't.
Exactly.
Word.
What about you?
I really like imagery, especially to showcase my audience how I see the world, especially, I don't know, just to create a space for them to enter in. In my Black Antique Part 2 poem, like that was real life. Like I was literally just seeing those items on a conveyor belt in order to reflect average everyday life, right? You know, I really try to connect with my audience by, again, trying to create a space that they can also enter, right? Something that is accessible, something that they can hold on to, something that can ground them and anchor them within my own poetry. So yeah, I love imagery.
Question was?
What's your favorite literary device or piece of figurative language to use in poetry and why?
I don't see poetry as the thing I do on the page anymore since I'm not writing like that. I see poetry in like teaching. I see poetry in like other art forms I'm trying to break into, not break into, but practice. And I think I don't know if this is a device, but so like my commitment is accumulated equates to the climate crisis. And the mechanism that is the most useful for that, or has been most useful for that, is just association. Like, how do I build, in the way that I'm conveying meaning, or in the teaching, or in conversations, how do I build capacity to associate some of these things with how it affects the planet? And so I don't know what the device there is, but it's like, yeah, association. I've come to understand like sentences as like literally just like it builds meaning by association. You learn to associate the subject with the predicate, and it's just that's what a story is, just a sequenced associate this with this and that. Then you just time it. You add some little like sprinkling adjectives and adverbs. And so how do you build a list of associations that someone can go through, and then by the end of it relate class to hurricanes? Hard, but fun.
That's dope. For all those literary scholars out there, I think confluence, you're very much talking about a theory, sign versus signifier, right? You offer a particular piece of word or image, and it elicits all these different types of interpretations that are all at play, right? But association works too. Sweet, next question. Thank you, I appreciate that.
I do have a question. I noticed that in both of y'all's work, and in some extent my work, and things I haven't shared here, that you write a lot about like interactions and like location, and that's very interesting. It's interesting to me because I wonder, especially when it's like things that are based on like real life experiences, and like how you go back to that memory, like what you choose to record, what you choose to add, what you don't add, and why, and like I guess what that process is like.
I can go first if that's cool, confluence. For me, and I guess, I don't know, I'm a literary nerd, so I apologize for all the literary references and stuff like that, but Tim O'Brien talks about in his book the things they carry, the story truth versus like the real truth, right? So like the happening truth versus just like the imagined truth, right? So you have to realize like I can't go back to those like real live moments, right? But my memory and my mind can like take me there. And so for me, I believe writing can act like time traveling, right? You can go back to a particular place and you can conjure it, right? And it may not necessarily be the exact thing, but for me, I'm trying to replicate the feelings, the emotions, and I don't know, the overall vibe to kind of take the language from like what the young kids say nowadays, right? They're all about vibes, right? And so for me, even though it may not be accurate, it's accurate to me in terms of conjuring that feeling that somebody else can resonate with and also maybe think about, right? And so, I don't know, for me, I love playing with memory. I love playing with those personal experiences just because, again, I'm trying to create a space so that my audience can also reflect and just think about a similar situation that they may have found themselves in, right? I tend to think that some people think that, you know, poetry is like super duper meta. I try to, I don't know, just help ground my audience in time and space so that they can reflect and be in that moment with me.
I'm in a journal, trying to just see if I can realize the pattern, so you know, what was the question?
The question was, we all write about space, small interactions, and also like locations, memory. How do you choose? How do you determine? Yeah.
I hope it can make sense here. I'm trapped here in Minneapolis. I'm trapped here in Minnesota, and I would like to be home in the Caribbean, but I'm trapped here for diverse reasons. And in that trappedness and that exile, there's a fracturing in my brain, where most of the time I'm here in Minneapolis, I feel disassociated. And there's a lot of fiction here in Minneapolis. Fiction being like the narrative of empire, disconnected from indigenous knowledge, I end up floating in a way that feels deeply unrooted, and I lose myself. I forget I'm not from here. It's all simple. It's all exile, right? I pick up my journal to write. I have impetus to capture and make art. That's something to share. When suddenly there's like clarity, or there's something that does not feel like fiction that I want to hold on to and be able to return to. It's like a portal into what is not fiction, a portal into something that feels real, a portal into something that feels useful. I describe my experience of myself as like multiple different bees. I'm a different, multiple different confluences, whatever. No, nobody heard that. That's not multiple different confluences. They split based on who I'm talking to, and then also based on where I am. And I think I'm writing, at this point, not the poems that I shared, but at this point my writing practice and my creation practice is a attempt to leave a paper trail, or like leave a paper trail for some version of confluence that is going through and trying to consolidate. Or trying to, what's that term in therapy?
Integrate.
Integrate, yes. Some version of confluence is trying to integrate things. Yeah, I think that's what drives me to capture and write or whatnot.
How about you?
I really like focusing on the micro movements. I like to believe I'm a very observant person, and especially when it comes to like interactions with people and like split second changes in emotion and expression, the energies of how things changing. And I think for me that usually guides, like when I'm trying to write back about a scenario or situation, and then I situate those like micro movements and like what's happening in the space in terms of like the atmosphere of the space, like how bright it is, or if it's cold, like all of these things that I think weave for me into the micro movements, and I think that for me tells more of the story than the actual like interaction that I'm trying to like capture. So I viewed the narrative around those.
Nice. Appreciate that. Great question.
Is there any questions from the audience? If you got any? Anyone know what our favorite color is?
I don't know, I could think about it, but I think I've seen some of your film work. Did you do like fermentation?
I did.
Yeah.
I do a lot of non-poetry related.
Well, I'm curious if you feel a connection between some of your film projects and some of your writing projects.
I'm trying to integrate them. It's hard for film, because for food, I think about food the same I think about poetry. But like translating that into film has been hard for me. It's been difficult. But my long-term goal is that when I feel more, I guess, skilled and confident, or like I feel like I understand the language of film, that I can merge it and I can kind of look at it through the same lens that I look at my written work and food as well.
But you say you think about food in the same way you think about poetry. Can you expand on that?
Oh, because it's a system. When I say the system, I mean like when I think about a recipe, I think about this recipe has like, maybe it has 10 ingredients. And then with those 10 ingredients, maybe there's like 12 different steps and 12 instructions. You're essentially, like you're building architecture when you're making food, even if like we don't specifically call it that. You're building a world essentially of how you arrange things in a way that makes sense, that produce a different outcome. And like with poems too, that's kind of how I approach them, because usually my work is kind of inspired by like me trying to articulate something, and then I try to break it down into like what are all the parts of this thing, like and so I'm essentially kind of building the same a system too with both of them. So again, I can map one into another because it makes sense to me as like different parts that are working together. That's also why I write about the bodies part so hard too. But yeah.
Go for it.
There's a lot of emotion in what you three have shared. And I'm curious where for you that surge of emotion comes from your writing process. Do you like to write in the moment when you're feeling things? Do you like to reflect after a while? Kind of how does it come together for you?
Okay, alright, I guess that's me. Well, you both are looking at me for some reason. Okay. I think right now, I'm reflecting a lot, and then like looking for ways to express, to cross kind of a distance in my language, and I can't sit down and do it. Sometimes, most of the time, what happens right now is I'm existing with people, I'm existing in my life, and somebody asks me a question, and I'm forced to answer it, and the only way to answer it is to kind of go through this trajectory of language. And then as I'm talking, I'm like, okay, I gotta record that. Or like in therapy, my therapist is like, you said you described your disassociation as if you were outside of yourself. One version of you is in the water, one isn't. What does that mean? And then I explain it, and I'm like, oh shit, that was a thing I was trying to express for a while. So a lot of times right now it's in conversation. I think I feel like I need to be talking to people. I need to be coming up with language and like actually communicate. And then I capture that somehow and turn it into something. I think that's the main way that it's working for me at this moment.
For me, I'm always writing, I'm always plotting, I'm always planning. I may not fully execute a poem, right? I very much am trying to conjure titles, something that I can return to and go back to. The poems I read tonight were actually 5 years old. I wrote these poems for my second book, which is an ekphrastic collection based on the artwork that went up after the murder of George Floyd. And for me, I just continue to write social commentary about my home country, right? And I feel like, I don't know, more recently my shit's gotten a lot more political, even though those poems I read were political. Like the stuff I'm writing is even that more. And I don't know, for me, like Nina Simone, I'm an artist, I'm trying to reflect the times, right? And I feel like even again, if I don't finish a piece, like I'm always just trying to think about it. And I think that also mirrors the writing process. I don't know about you, but my writing process is a little bit long, right? And I wish I could just poop out a 300-page novel like Stephen King anytime I want, right? But that's not how some folks work. And for me, I really appreciate the reflection periods that I have as a way to gain clarity in what I'm writing about or articulate something a little bit better on the page.
For me, it's really important for me to find the right word or the right, what I would like perceive to be the right word or the right description of something. So when I often get a lot of in the moment inspiration for something to write about or a line, but I don't have in the present I don't have the language to put to all of the textures of what it feels like, what it tastes like, what it looks like, and even just I don't have all of the parts to build all of the architecture of trying to articulate that thing. So what ends up happening is that I have a lot of unfinished work. I have more unfinished work than I do finished work, and sometimes it takes years to write one poem. And when it comes, and I think what I've been trying to do to kind of speed up the process has been, I realized that the more varied experiences I expose myself to, the more vocabulary and the more textures I have access to. So experiences in terms of other arts, but also other kinds of books, even just day-to-day life of trying to live as full of a life as I can, so that I can have more access to the language to be kind of precise in what I want to describe.
And to add to that, especially if you're trying to apply this to maybe your own life as a writer, I have plays and short stories, non-poems poetry things that I've written years ago that I'm returning back to, especially as you were talking about having more varied experiences, right? Sometimes I feel as if I need to grow a little bit myself in order to return back to a piece and give it justice. So, you know, I agree with that. Sometimes it takes years for me to like really nail a poem, right? That's okay.
Any other questions before we close out? Ah.
Okay. I think for me, for which I actually find is really ironic because I'm like very like entrenched in like the sifting process of like finding the right word and the right feeling and the right texture and all of these things. But at the same time, the end product of my work almost always feels very disconnected from myself. So sometimes it's like it's very odd. it's maybe not odd is the right word, but it feels because I can remember like the process of writing the work, but it's kind of like maybe this is a bad analogy, but like it's kind of like when someone like gives birth and like they kind of go and like not donate the baby. I was gonna say donate the baby. Donate the baby is wild. No, give the child up for adoption. That's kind of what it feels like for my work. Where I'm like, this becomes like this is something that was a part of me for so long, and now it's kind of no longer a part of me. Yeah.
I think in the past, I used to relate to my work as like artifact of some things I'm struggling with, and I would turn to the page to write a poem or do my connections across what I was like feeling in my body, connecting in my body. And that felt like I don't know if I know how to answer this question. Because I'm like disconnected from that now. Now I'm not really writing poems, so I can like maybe refer to my writing practices mostly journaling. And then writing or like the art making that I'm doing that is not poetry. I feel like I reflect on those or like associate those. There's like a lot of purpose. Like I have a lot of like heavy, it's a lot of pressure I have on the things I'm doing, which I'm trying to figure out ways to release. But I kind of relate to it in the like I'm doing this for myself to express a thing or try to capture a thing, and then I offer it to someone. And if it does the work that I want it to do, then I hold on to it. If it's not doing the work that I want it to do, then I kind of like put it on a pile elsewhere. I'm just like, thank you. And I maybe return to you in some other context, but I am committed to the thing that I am trying to do right now. And then when it does the thing that I want to do, or it helps somebody in some way do the thing that I'm committed to, then I'm like, yay. I don't know if that's helpful for people. I don't know if that's a nice way for anybody to do it per se. But it's what I'm doing to keep my political commitment right now.
For me, I found writing as a way to help me articulate my emotions just because I was socialized terribly as a young man, young black boy growing up in America, so I had to do a lot of unlearning. And for me to kind of go through those processes of unlearning, came to writing, specifically poetry, as a way to, again, just help me articulate my feelings other than anger. I used to be a rapper, like freestyler, so I was always down, like drop some beats, but it wasn't until I took my first poetry writing class that my teacher challenged me to work with different figurative language. She was like, yo, you're pretty good at sound and like alliteration, and like that makes sense, but like, you know, what can you do with imagery? Like, what can you do with these other stuff? Like, what can you showcase that isn't sound-based, right? And so for me, I battle with that quintessential idea of double consciousness that, you know, W.E.B. Du Bois phrase, especially being a black man in America. I find that my work is reflective of the black experience, and I often realize and know that it can be viewed as militant, and honestly, I love it, right? Especially because I'm trying to express myself in all the ways that I am, regardless of what like the white gaze sees, right? And so for me, even though I'm battling imposter syndrome because, you know, I'm like, damn, I don't have this amount of publications, or, you know, other folks that get put on, and I'm still like, you know, in a battle with my publisher to be like, yo, my first book coming out, right? And I'm not sure if it's because they don't have any money, or it's because of, you know, the nature of who I am and like the content of my work, right? But I don't let that put me down. Like sometimes I get sad about that shit, but you know, at the end of the day, I originally came to writing again to articulate my feelings, right? I was writing poems for myself, right? I'm writing poems, I wanna write poems and stories and shit that I wanna see in the world. And it's nice that I have a couple stuff published, right? But you know, that's over there. I'm over here with the writing. You feel me? Of course, for sure. Sweet.
If there's any more questions, we'll leave the space. Cool. Thank y'all for coming.
Yeah, this is awesome.
And thank y'all for your work. Thank you for having us for your collective. All of y'all take care.